one of the most profound, or perhaps the most profound experiences I've ever had in life, experiential shifts I've ever had in life, was the dropping of doubt. Now, I have to say, this shift that I talk about, awakening, came with a lot of other aspects to it than just the dropping of doubt. But I want to key in on this a bit for the sake of this video. Before awakening, for me, life was really uncomfortable. It was a lot of anxiety, a lot of thought, a lot of entanglement in thoughts, a lot of a feeling of trying to figure something out about myself or the world that I just couldn't figure out. A lot of a feeling that I'm not sure if I can trust my own thoughts. And at times, my own thoughts felt scary or too intense or suspect. But I didn't know how to fix that problem. I didn't really know how to control thoughts or whether I could control thoughts. I just felt entangled in them. And all these beliefs about myself that the thoughts were constantly portraying, I didn't know if I should collect those beliefs or try to reinforce the beliefs or try to change the beliefs. But all of this activity within thought just made the whole thing feel even more uncomfortable. So it didn't dawn on me for quite some time that the problem might actually be the thoughts themselves. It wasn't until I read this single line in a book about Buddhism that something really hit me as far as recognizing that the thoughts themselves may be the issue. And the statement was by a Zen master, and it was, "Thinking is the disease of the human mind." When I heard this, something opened up, something that wasn't yet awakening, but something very real seemed to kind of open up in the space of my experience of being me. There was a softening, maybe, of that intense experience of thought and thinking. There was also a deep recognition that there was a truth to what I had just read, that there's something about that that's true. And in the past, I had noticed thoughts were uncomfortable. I had noticed that anxiety had something to do with thoughts, or seemed to, but it hadn't dawned on me that maybe the thoughts themselves were the problem, or the entanglement with thoughts. Now I know it's the identification with thoughts, but I didn't realize that at the time. I couldn't, because the identification was so solid. I took myself to be what those thoughts were saying I was, which was someone moving through time with a certain history, a certain name, a certain character, a certain family, and so forth. So looking from the view of that, or looking through the view of that identity, I couldn't imagine what it would be like to not experience that identity as this binding collection of thoughts. But my instinct told me that there was a new way to experience life or reality or myself that wasn't bound by thought. That's what that sentence meant, that the disease of the human mind is thinking. Well, then there must be something outside of that. There must be something more primary to that. There must be a disease-free state that doesn't require me to be entangled in thoughts 24/7. That was the instinct. And it took a while to really unpack what that actually meant and how that played out in my life. But I will fast forward to the event that occurred, which, to call it an event is kind of funny. It was more like the ending of an event, the ending of that sense of the self that was separate, that was struggling and suffering and being entangled in thoughts and pushed and pulled around by thoughts. That kind of came to an end. That's more what this event was like. But regardless, it was a big shift in experience, a huge shift in experience, and a sort of miraculous recognition of what is here already that has nothing to do with thoughts. Thoughts can come and go, and this doesn't change. This what was realized, this recognition. And that was a huge relief. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the biggest aspect of that probably was the loss of this doubt mass, this heavy blanket of doubt. What's interesting about this is before that happened, I probably could have told you that the thoughts do have a lot of doubt built into them, or I have a lot of doubts about myself or the world. But strangely, I would hide that from even myself. Like, I wouldn't have admitted that. And even if I did admit that there was a lot of doubt here. The thoughts are always doubting who I am and that I'm capable and that I'm okay and all of it. Even if I had fully admitted that and I could see that happening, there's no way I could have anticipated the massive amount of relief that was afforded when that mass of doubt dropped away. I couldn't, looking from the view of that doubt, looking through the lens of that doubt, I could have never imagined how heavy it actually was. I knew it was heavy. I knew there was something off about it, but I had no idea how much weight was actually being carried around unnecessarily. And this is the sort of sad, but sort of funny, tragic, cosmic joke of this whole awakening thing is I was doing it to myself, but I didn't know I was doing it to myself. I was innocently causing myself to suffer by attaching and binding to all those thoughts and identities and beliefs and doubts. Specifically in this video, we're talking about doubt. So I want to say a lot of the identity was tied around doubt. Does it seem strange to you that you can actually identify with doubt? You can identify as doubt and not know it. I mean, I know that seems totally bizarre, and yet that's what I was doing. I was walking around as this sort of mass of doubt. What does that feel like? What does it look like? It feels like self-consciousness. It feels like hesitation. It feels like shame. It feels like something's wrong with me. It feels like a lot of thoughts. It feels like not trusting myself, not trusting my own spontaneity, not trusting life. That's what it feels like. But again, I was so intertwined with all of that. I was so identified with all of that. I had no idea that it was just the doubt. It wasn't me. That wasn't me that was being experienced. That wasn't reality that was being experienced. It was a strange and distorted reflection of reality that had turned in on itself, become self-conscious, and then tried to solve itself through thoughts. That's what was happening. So to even say it was me looking back doesn't really make sense. I'm just saying it to relate through this video. But it was a distorted mockery of experience that felt like this struggling, self-conscious, shame-ridden, doubt-laden being. It was miserable for me. For other people, I find it's a little less miserable, but I think the more people start to investigate what's going on inside them in the emotion body and even listening to this kind of stuff, the more they actually become aware of it. It is pretty miserable, even though you're not fully aware of it. Like I wasn't fully aware. I was aware that I was suffering, but I wasn't fully aware of the degree of suffering, right? So when this shift occurred, and it was quick, that doubt mass dropped. The blanket of doubt, you know, those weighted blankets, they feel like 20, 30 pounds or whatever. Although those are very comforting when you're laying in bed under a weighted blanket. This was not comforting, but it was like that. Like I didn't know I was wearing that. I didn't know how heavy it had become, and it was just suddenly gone. I can't tell you how much of a relief that was and a sort of surprise it was. So it's a paradox because it was surprising, and at the same time, it was more familiar than what was there before. So what was surprising is how much weight I had been carrying without knowing it, how much I'd been causing myself to suffering without realizing it, how much struggle was just struggling against struggle, but it kept going because I thought it was me, how much that had been going on. That was all very surprising. And it was surprising how good it felt to not have it there. At the same time, like I said, there was something familiar. That's what was already here. When all that struggle went away, that was just this massive distraction of constantly looking at the struggle itself. When that went away, all of a sudden it was like I was freed up to experience what's actually going on here, what is actually the living truth of reality. And it was like, wow, this is, in one sense, not surprising. It's so familiar. It's so real, more real than real. So alive, so crystalline, so clear, so fluid. And that was amazing. I mean, it was just unspeakably relieving to know that that is actually how reality is. The reality is not just a mass of struggle and suffering. That's not what it is. That's not what, even to be conscious, to be aware, does not automatically result in suffering. That was a huge, huge relief, a huge shift. So moving beyond that doubt taught me so much about doubt. And looking back, I could see then, doubt was really just a collection of thoughts. That's all it was. It was one thought after another thought after another thought, but they're all tainted with, I'm not sure if I'm good enough. Oh, I'm not sure if I have this figured out. Oh, I got to figure out the solution, but I don't know how. I got to figure out the solution of me. Why don't I communicate well? Why am I not good in relationship? Why do I doubt so much? Why are there so many thoughts? Like this, like why, and doubt. I could look back and see, oh my gosh, that's just thoughts. Just thoughts. And I'll tell you what's funny. The thoughts didn't go away even. They calmed down a lot, but initially they didn't just go away. There was just no binding to the thoughts. I could see a doubt thought just come and go like, wow, that's about nobody. Has nothing to do with anything. And then the thoughts weren't a problem either. They just felt like surprisingly enjoyable. Just a thought passing through. A thought could pass through that says, I'm a good person. I'm a bad person. I'm enlightened. I'm not enlightened. I don't know what to do here. A thought could pass through saying anything, and there was just no reaction to it. Maybe that's the clearest way I can say this. There was no reaction to thoughts. The reaction to thoughts, constant reaction to thoughts and reacting to thoughts, what was what was making me feel identified and small and stuck and doubtful. So the identification stopped. The struggling with thoughts stopped. And then all of a sudden thoughts weren't a big deal. They just like dissolved into the periphery. And that clarity and that crystalline aliveness that I was talking about was far more interesting than any silly thought. And it's just right here and it's available all the time. That was so beautiful. So what I wanted to do in this video ultimately was talk about the relationship between doubt and fear. Okay. This may not have been immediately obvious to me after that shift happened, but now it is. That ultimately, this doubt we talk about is just a sort of form of psychological fear, okay? And I want to make a distinction between psychological fear and something like your life is in danger right now fear, like someone chasing you with a knife. That's a different kind of fear than I'm talking about. Psychological fear is a fear based on essentially thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions, not based on what's quote unquote actually happening right now in your environment. But I don't want to go too much into that right now. I just want to be clear with the definition. So the psychological fear that's associated with all of this doubt works like this. If you ask yourself, well, why do I doubt? Why do I doubt so much? Or why does a doubt thought get my attention? Because again, thoughts are just thoughts. They don't cause anything, actually. It's the reaction to the thoughts and the belief in the thoughts that causes all of it. All of the mind identification, all of the struggle, all of the contraction, all of it. So why do I identify with a doubt thought? Why, and especially again and again when it's uncomfortable, but I still identify with it. Well, there's a fear, this is what I have found, there's a fear of what will happen when I let go of those doubt thoughts. When I let go of the massive doubt, I have a fear of what will happen. Why? Well, because I believe that those doubts are doing something for me. I believe that those doubts are keeping me on track. I believe that those doubts are keeping me healthy. I don't know. I believe that those doubts are showing me how not to lose control. Do you see how all of this is framed in the negative? It's all about fear. When we believe in doubt, when we believe in the doubt thoughts and that massive doubt, it puts us in this sort of quote unquote safe place. It's not safe in the sense that you're not safe from suffering. It is the cauldron of suffering, but it's safe in the sense that you're not breaking out of what seems to be familiar to you, what has become familiar. Okay. When you let that thought go, that doubt thought, when you let the next doubt thought go and the next doubt thought go, when you let the massive thought go, we're talking about awakening. When you let the identity with those thoughts go, you will enter something rather mysterious, as I've been describing. It will feel like the unknown. It will feel like you're taking a step beyond yourself, beyond what you know about yourself. And the body mind will often respond with fear, physical fear. This will feel less like psychological fear and more like someone's chasing you with a knife fear. This is what I often call the fear barrier. Now know that when this happens, when the body feels like an intense fear for a short time, and I mean in the moment you're letting go of this doubt mass, this identity mass, it's okay. It will feel hot. The body will feel intense, like high heart rate. You may be shaking. The thoughts will get really acute, like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to, whatever, disappear out of reality. The instruction I give always is notice those are also just thoughts. Those are just fearful thoughts. Let them go. That intensity of fear, the physical fear, will pass. Give it 3, 4, 5 minutes. See what happens. It'll pass. And then once you've sort of breached that physical fear barrier, you'll have the opportunity to see that to move beyond the familiar is the same thing, that the familiarity of thought is the same thing as letting go of a massive amount of doubt and fear. So the fear thought before that said, oh, I have to pay attention to all these thoughts, I have to pay attention to all these doubts, or else I'll whatever. I won't know what to do, I won't know where to go, I'll go crazy, I'll look bad, I'll be humiliated. All those fears, psychological fears, you'll realize all of those thoughts were nothing but thoughts. You can walk directly into the unknown right now, and it's completely safe. It's more than safe. It's everything you've ever wanted. It's everything you've ever wanted. So what this is all about, ultimately, is really first seeing all of that doubt mass, recognizing it as such, and then being able to, or willing, I should say, to move beyond it. Being willing to move beyond it. And then it's going to be moving beyond fear and breaching that fear barrier. When you've left behind fear and doubt, then thoughts aren't so enticing anymore. Thoughts aren't a problem. Our identification with thoughts was the problem, and that was because of the fear and doubt. Once you've let those go, it's not so much of a problem. It's more like just a direct curiosity about the nature of yourself and reality. Wow, what happens when I let go of the next thought? What happens when I let go of the next thought? And the next thought, on and on and on. And you will be nose to nose with the unknown, with a great mystery, a mystery beyond anything you could ever imagine within the world of thought and concept. This will be far more real than anything you've ever experienced. So that's the relationship between fear and doubt, and that's the benefit of moving beyond fear and doubt and how the mechanism works. So I hope that's helpful. Let me know how that lands.